Hello, and welcome. Today, we embark on a profound journey, a descent not just into the sands of Egypt, but into the very heart of one of history's most captivating and enduring enigmas. We are about to traverse the thin veil that separates legend from reality, and fact from fear. Our story begins here, in a place where the very air seems to vibrate with the whispers of the past. This is the Theban necropolis, a sprawling, sun-blasted domain of the dead on the west bank of the Nile, directly across from the ancient city of Thebes. It is a landscape of stark, almost brutalist beauty, where jagged limestone cliffs, carved by the wind into surreal shapes, stand as silent sentinels over a secret world below. For nearly 500 years during the New Kingdom, this was the final resting place chosen by Egypt's most powerful rulers. They abandoned the towering pyramids, which had become beacons for tomb robbers, seeking instead secrecy in this desolate valley. They believed this hidden realm would protect their journey to the afterlife, safeguarding their treasures and their mummified bodies for eternity. But this valley holds more than just the known tombs open to tourists. It guards deeper secrets, lost chambers, and perhaps, the lingering echoes of a curse that would echo into the modern age. To understand the obsession with secrecy, we must first understand what the pharaohs were trying to protect. For the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transformative passage to an eternal afterlife, a mirror of their world but perfect and everlasting. This belief was the engine of their civilization. The king's body was not merely a corpse, it was a vessel. His Ka, or life force, and his Ba, or personality, needed to return to it to achieve immortality. This is why the science of mummification was perfected into a sacred, 70-day ritual. But the preserved body needed a home, a fortress to protect it from both physical and supernatural threats. This home was the tomb, filled with everything the king would need for eternity: food, clothing, weapons, chariots, and Ashapti figurines, magical servants who would come to life and work for him in the hereafter. The treasure was not mere wealth, it was divine currency and practical necessity for a god-king's journey through the underworld. Yet, for all their divine power, the pharaohs were perpetually haunted by a mortal fear: the desecration of their tombs. The very treasures meant to ensure their eternal life made them irresistible targets. As soon as a tomb was sealed and the workmen's rubble cleared, a dangerous game of cat and mouse began. The valley was patrolled by the Medjay, the elite police force of the pharaohs, tasked with protecting this sacred ground. But the rewards were too great, the temptation too powerful. We know from papyri like the Turin papyrus that tomb robbing was a sophisticated, organized crime. These were not mere opportunists, they were often skilled craftsmen who had worked on the tombs themselves, or corrupt officials who knew where to look. They would tunnel through solid rock, bypass intricate blocking systems, and navigate pitch-black corridors, all while evading the guards. Their success was the pharaoh's ultimate failure. One by one, the tombs were violated, the mummies torn apart for amulets, the gold stripped away, leaving behind empty, echoing chambers. This cycle of creation and destruction is the central, tragic paradox of the Valley of the Kings. By the end of the New Kingdom, the valley was a shadow of its former self. The political and economic power of Egypt waned, and the institution of the pharaoh crumbled. The unthinkable happened: the priests themselves, the guardians of the faith, were forced to take desperate measures. To save the royal mummies from complete annihilation, they began a secret, macabre operation. They gathered the desecrated bodies of kings like Ramses the Great and Seti I from their plundered tombs. In a series of covert nighttime missions, they rewrapped them, labeled them, and hid them in two secret caches. One was in a cliff tomb known as DB 320, and another within the tomb of Amenhotep II. Here, in dark, cramped conditions, dozens of Egypt's greatest pharaohs were unceremoniously stacked together, like forgotten furniture in a royal attic. It was a humbling end, but it saved them from oblivion. Meanwhile, the location of one young, relatively minor pharaoh's tomb was so well hidden, or so insignificant in the grand scheme, that it was simply forgotten. For centuries, the valley slept under the desert sun, its secrets buried deep. The world of the pharaohs faded into myth, remembered only by the local villagers and a handful of European travelers who brought back fantastical tales. Then, in the early 19th century, a new breed of explorer arrived: the Egyptologist. Armed with shovels, a passion for history, and often, a healthy dose of romanticism, they began to systematically search the valley. Men like Giovanni Belzoni, a former circus strongman, used brute force to blast his way into tombs, uncovering magnificent but already plundered chambers. Each discovery was thrilling, yet a profound disappointment lingered. Every tomb they entered had been violated in antiquity. The dream of finding an intact royal burial, filled with all its original splendor, became the holy grail of Egyptology. It was a dream many pursued, but most believed was impossible. The valley, they thought, had given up all its secrets. Enter Howard Carter, a stubborn, meticulous, and fiercely determined artist and archaeologist. He was a man driven not by the prospect of treasure, but by an unshakable belief. He was convinced, based on a few scattered finds, a faience cup, a piece of gold foil bearing the name of a poorly documented pharaoh, Tutankhamun, that this king's tomb still lay undisturbed somewhere in the valley. For years, he secured funding from a wealthy British patron, Lord Carnarvon, a man of refined taste with a passion for Egypt and a penchant for gambling on expensive ventures. Together, they embarked on a quest that would become the stuff of legend. Season after season, they dug, shifting thousands of tons of sand and rubble, finding little but disappointment. By the summer of 1922, Lord Carnarvon's patience and finances were wearing thin. He called Carter to his English estate, Highclere Castle, and delivered an ultimatum: one final season. It was all or nothing. On November 1, 1922, Carter returned to the valley with a renewed, if desperate, sense of purpose. His team began digging in a previously overlooked area, right near the entrance of the tomb of Ramses VI. It was a last, logical guess. Just 3 days into the dig, on the morning of November 4, a hushed excitement fell over the workers. Their shovels hit not soft sand, but a hard, man-made surface. As they cleared more away, a shape emerged, a step, cut into the bedrock. With feverish intensity, they uncovered a second step, then a third. By the end of the day, they had exposed the top of a staircase, descending steeply into the darkness. It was clearly a tomb entrance, and to Carter's astonishment, it appeared to be sealed with ancient plaster seals, a sign that it might be intact. His heart pounding, he ordered the staircase to be refilled with sand and sent an urgent telegram to Lord Carnarvon in England. At last have made wonderful discovery in valley. A magnificent tomb with seals intact. Recovered same for your arrival. Congratulations. The following weeks were an agonizing test of patience for Carter. He maintained a round-the-clock guard on the site, desperately protecting his discovery from looters and the prying eyes of the world's press, which had already begun to catch the scent of a major story. He waited, each day feeling like an eternity, until Lord Carnarvon and his daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, could arrive from England. Finally, on November 23, the party was assembled. The air was electric with a tension that was almost unbearable, a mixture of scholarly excitement and the fear of another heartbreak. The staircase was re-excavated, revealing the entire sealed doorway. Now, under the full light of day, Carter could examine the seals more closely. And there, amidst the necropolis seals, he found what he had dreamed of, the cartouche of Tutankhamun. This was it. This was the tomb of the lost king. But a new, terrifying question now presented itself. At the bottom of the doorway, there was evidence of a repair. The tomb had been breached in antiquity. Was it yet another plundered wreck? Had they come all this way only to find another empty shell? November 26, 1922. A date that would be etched into the annals of archaeology forever. With the greatest care, Carter made a small breach in the upper left-hand corner of the doorway, just large enough to peer through. He inserted an iron rod to test for noxious gases, then lit a candle and held it to the opening. The hot desert air rushing out of the chamber made the flame flicker wildly. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, details began to emerge from the chaos. "Can you see anything?" Lord Carnarvon asked, his voice tight with anxiety. After what felt like an eternity, Carter replied, his voice trembling with emotion, "Yes, wonderful things." It was the understatement of the century. The flickering candlelight revealed a vision from a fairy tale. The anteroom was packed with a chaotic jumble of objects, golden chariots, disassembled and gleaming, strange animal statues with glowing eyes, alabaster vases of exquisite beauty, a golden throne peeking out from a shadowy corner, and everywhere, the glint of gold. It was not an empty shell. It was a time capsule, sealed for over 3,200 years, and it was, against all odds, virtually intact. The days and weeks that followed were a meticulous, almost archaeological ballet. Carter, a methodical perfectionist, understood that the true value was not in the gold, but in the information. He assembled a team of specialists, photographers, conservators, architects, to document every object in situ before it was moved even an inch. The world watched, captivated, as each new item was carefully extracted, photographed, and catalogued. They discovered that the robbers who had broken in millennia ago had been interrupted, perhaps by the Magi. They had rummaged through chests of jewelry, scattering a few pieces, but had taken little. The authorities had then resealed the tomb, burying its secret for over 30 centuries. As the team cleared the anteroom, they found more wonders: a golden lion-headed couch, a child's chair, a painted casket depicting the young pharaoh in intimate, domestic scenes with his queen, Tutankhamun. This was no longer just a treasure trove, it was a personal story, a glimpse into the life of a forgotten boy king. After months of painstaking work, the anteroom was finally cleared, revealing a startling discovery on its northern wall. It wasn't a wall at all, but another sealed doorway, flanked by two magnificent, life-sized statues of the pharaoh. They stood as eternal sentinels, their faces polished black, wearing gold headdresses and kilts, holding a mace and a staff. Their eyes, made of obsidian and alabaster, seemed to follow the intruders in their sacred space. The air in the tomb grew heavier, more sacred. This was it, the entrance to the burial chamber itself. Unlike the first doorway, these seals were pristine, unbroken. No ancient robber had penetrated this far. On February 17, 1923, in the presence of a select group of Egyptian officials and invited guests, Carter prepared to breach this final barrier. The tension was palpable, a thick silence broken only by the sound of chisels carefully chipping away at the mortar. This was the moment of truth. What lay behind this door was the heart of the entire discovery, the ultimate prize that had eluded explorers for centuries. As the first stone was loosened and a small opening was made, Carter once again brought forth a candle to test the atmosphere. He then widened the hole, bringing an electric light to it. What he saw next would leave him speechless, utterly transfixed. Lord Carnarvon, unable to bear the suspense, called out, "Well, what is it?" Carter, his voice choked with overwhelming emotion, could only manage a few, breathless words. "I am standing in the entrance to a room, and it is full of gold. Everywhere, the glint of gold." As the light pierced the darkness, it revealed the most iconic archaeological find in history. Directly facing them was an enormous, golden shrine, nearly filling the entire chamber. It was constructed from wood, overlaid with brilliant gold foil, and its doors were closed but not sealed, as if the priests had only just left. The scale was staggering, the craftsmanship sublime. This was not merely a room, it was a sacred sanctuary built to house the mortal remains of a god-king for all eternity. The world was now utterly captivated. Newspapers competed for every scrap of information, and the name Tutankhamun was on everyone's lips. But as the team prepared for the next, most critical phase, dismantling the shrine to reach the sarcophagus, tragedy struck. In April 1923, just a few months after the historic opening, Lord Carnarvon, the financial backbone of the entire expedition, fell seriously ill. He had been bitten by a mosquito, and after accidentally nicking the bite while shaving, the wound became infected, leading to blood poisoning and pneumonia. He died in a Cairo hotel on April 5. The press, hungry for a sensational story, pounced. At the moment of his death, back in England, his beloved dog Susie was said to have let out a howl and dropped dead. And in Cairo, the lights mysteriously went out across the city. The legend of the curse of the pharaoh was born. The superstitious saw a direct link. The wrath of the disturbed pharaoh had claimed its first victim. Rationalists dismissed it as coincidence and media hype, but the seed of fear was planted, forever linking Tutankhamun's name with supernatural vengeance. Despite the tragedy and the growing media frenzy, the scientific work had to continue. Howard Carter, now without his patron and friend, pressed on with a heavy heart but an unwavering resolve. The task before him was monumental: to carefully dismantle the four nested golden shrines that occupied the burial chamber. Each shrine was a masterpiece of cabinet making, covered in gold and inlaid with brilliant blue faience, but they were packed so tightly that there was barely room to work. For months, his team labored in the stifling, cramped space, meticulously labeling each piece of wood and metal as they took the shrines apart, layer by layer. It was an archaeological puzzle of the highest order. Finally, after the fourth and final shrine was disassembled, they stood before the object these magnificent structures were built to protect, a single, massive block of yellow quartzite, carved in the shape of a shrine. This was the sarcophagus. Resting on top of it was a stunning, shattered linen pall, its golden rosette still gleaming, a fragile relic that had crumbled under the weight of time, or perhaps, as some whispered, from the sudden exposure to the modern air. The day of the sarcophagus opening arrived, an event shrouded in even greater suspense and superstition than the chamber's initial breach. A heavy granite lid, estimated to weigh over a ton, rested on the quartzite box. Using a complex system of pulleys and chains, the team, their nerves stretched to the breaking point, began the agonizingly slow process of raising it. The screech of metal against stone echoed in the silent chamber. As the lid was lifted, inch by painstaking inch, a gasp rippled through the small audience. Beneath the granite was a second lid, one of such breathtaking beauty that it seemed to suck the air from the room. It was a sculpted likeness of the pharaoh himself, lying in repose, made of solid gold. His arms were crossed over his chest, holding the crook and flail, the symbols of kingship. His face, of the purest gold, was serene and youthful, a perfect portrait of the boy king, framed by the striped Nimes headcloth, inlaid with lapis lazuli and quartz. This was no mere coffin lid, it was one of the most magnificent works of art ever discovered, a golden effigy guarding the secrets within. The discovery of the golden coffin was only the beginning. Beneath the first, solid gold lid, they found a second, even more elaborate anthropoid coffin, also made of gold and inlaid with multicolored glass and semi-precious stones. And beneath that, a third coffin, this one made of solid gold, so heavy it was almost impossible to lift. The extravagance was beyond comprehension. Inside this final, golden shell lay the mummy of the king himself. But a final shock awaited them. The ritual resins and unguents poured over the mummy during burial had, over the centuries, hardened into a solid, black mass, cementing the king's body irrevocably to the bottom of his golden coffin. The linen wrappings, the gold, and the body were fused into one. After attempts to loosen it with heat failed, the unthinkable decision was made: the mummy would have to be cut apart to be removed. It was a devastating but necessary sacrifice for science. As the anatomist Dr. Douglas Derry began his work, he revealed the fragile, 3,300-year-old body of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, allowing the world to finally look upon the face of the lost king. While the world was fixated on the golden coffins and the mummy, a smaller, sealed doorway was discovered in the burial chamber. This led to a fourth room, the so-called treasury. Though smaller than the others, it was a chamber of wonders that would have been the crown jewel of any other discovery. It was here that the canopic shrine stood, a breathtaking gilded canopy guarded by the four goddesses Isis, Nephthys, Neith, and Selkut, their arms outstretched in a protective gesture. Inside the shrine was the exquisite alabaster canopic chest containing the king's embalmed organs. The room was also filled with a mesmerizing array of ritual objects, miniature solar barks for the king's journey with the gods, over 30 beautifully crafted model boats to serve him in the afterlife, and a stunning statue of the god Anubis, depicted as a black jackal on a shrine, his ears pricked, ever vigilant. This room was not about worldly wealth, but about spiritual preparation, containing everything the king's soul would need for its perilous journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. As the last artifacts were catalogued and removed, the legend of the curse only grew. The death of Lord Carnarvon was followed by others. George J. Gould, a visitor to the tomb, died of a fever. Arthur Mace, a key member of Carter's team, succumbed to arsenic poisoning, and Howard Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, was found dead in his bed from a suspected heart attack. The press had a field day, inventing ever more elaborate stories of the mummy's curse. Yet, the man at the center of it all, Howard Carter, lived for another 16 years, dying of lymphoma at the age of 64. Most of the core excavation team also lived long lives. Modern science offers simple explanations for the so-called curse. The sealed tombs could have harbored ancient bacteria or mold spores, like aspergillus, which could cause fatal infections in those with compromised immune systems, like the ailing Carnarvon. Furthermore, the presence of toxic materials like arsenic and mercury, used in paints and mummification rituals, could have accumulated in the air over millennia. The curse was not a supernatural vengeance, but a perfect storm of media sensationalism, coincidence, and potentially ancient pathogens and toxins. The story of Tutankhamun did not end with Carter. In the 21st century, his mummy became the subject of the most advanced scientific investigation. In 2005, it was removed from its tomb and placed inside a CT scanner. For the first time, we could look beyond the gold and the wrappings to see the physical reality of the boy king. The scans revealed a young man, about 19 years old, standing 5 feet 6 inches tall. He had a slightly cleft palate and an overbite. But the most significant findings were pathological. His left foot was deformed, he had a clubfoot and was missing a toe bone, meaning he would have walked with a limp and likely used a cane, several of which were found in his tomb. He also suffered from choler disease, a debilitating condition of the foot. This was a frail young man, burdened with physical ailments. The heretic King Akhenaten's depictions of himself with an elongated skull and feminine hips now took on a new light. It was possibly a genetic trait. Tutankhamun was not the robust warrior pharaoh of legend, but a disabled ruler who relied on staffs not just as symbols of power, but as practical aids for mobility. The CT scans provided a wealth of information about Tutankhamun's life, but they also ignited a fierce debate about his death. A dark, dense spot was detected at the back of his skull, initially fueling speculation of murder by a blow to the head. However, further analysis revealed this was not a pre-mortem injury but had likely occurred during the mummification process or even by Carter's team. The mystery deepened. The scans did show an unhealed fracture in his left thigh bone. This could have been a fatal accident. Perhaps he fell from his chariot during a hunt, a scene vividly depicted on the beautiful painted chest found in his tomb. The fracture could have led to a severe infection or a fat embolism. Recent DNA analysis added another layer, revealing that Tutankhamun suffered from multiple malaria infections, a disease that would have weakened him considerably. The prevailing theory now suggests a perfect storm, a frail, genetically compromised young man, suffering from a debilitating bone disease and chronic malaria, who succumbed to complications from a severe leg fracture. His death was not the result of a single dramatic event, but a tragic cascade of failing health. Today, the treasures of Tutankhamun are the crown jewels of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and soon, the new Grand Egyptian Museum. They have toured the world, captivating millions and shaping our modern perception of ancient Egypt. Howard Carter's discovery did more than just fill museum cases, it created a global phenomenon, Tutmania. It influenced art, architecture, fashion, and film, cementing the image of the pharaohs in the popular imagination. But beyond the gold and the glory, the true legacy of Tutankhamun is one of knowledge. His intact tomb provided an unparalleled, frozen moment in time, a complete inventory of royal burial practices, art, religion, and daily life at the end of the 18th dynasty. It validated the work of Egyptologists and gave context to the plundered tombs of greater pharaohs. The boy king, who ruled for a mere decade and was almost erased from history, ultimately became its most famous ambassador. His story is a poignant reminder of the fragility of power, the universality of human aspiration for immortality, and the enduring thrill of discovery that still lies buried, waiting in the sands of Egypt. The empty tomb of Tutankhamun stands today not as a plundered relic, but as a sacred monument to discovery. The vibrant wall paintings, depicting the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife, now tell a new story, the story of modern archaeology. Visitors from around the world descend into the same staircase that Carter first uncovered, standing in the very spot where he first peered into the antechamber. The burial chamber, though empty of its treasures, still holds the king's quartzite sarcophagus, a silent sentinel in the dark. The atmosphere is one of profound reverence and historical weight. This is no longer just KV62, it is a pilgrimage site, a place where one can feel the direct connection between our world and the world of the pharaohs. The electricity of Carter's discovery seems to have been absorbed into the very walls, making Tutankhamun's tomb the most intimate and evocative of all the royal tombs in the valley. The legacy of the discovery extends far beyond the tomb's walls. The meticulous methods pioneered by Howard Carter and his team set a new, rigorous standard for archaeology. His systematic approach, photographing every object in situ, creating detailed floor plans, and painstakingly conserving fragile materials, became the blueprint for all future excavations. The Tutankhamun expedition was a turning point, moving the field from a treasure-hunting adventure to a disciplined scientific inquiry. It demonstrated that the true value lay not in the gold, but in the context, the data, and the stories that objects could tell when their position and relationship to one another were preserved. This legacy is his greatest gift to Egyptology, ensuring that future discoveries would be understood with a depth and clarity that was never before possible. For decades, Egyptologists wondered if Tutankhamun's small, seemingly modest tomb held one final secret. Its unusual layout and size prompted theories that it might be merely the outer section of a larger tomb, perhaps belonging to the elusive Queen Nefertiti. In 2015, using state-of-the-art ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging, scientists scanned the walls of the tomb. The results sent shockwaves through the Egyptological community. The scans suggested the presence of voids or empty spaces behind the north and west walls of the burial chamber. The data indicated possible doorways and corridors, hinting at undiscovered chambers. For a brief, exhilarating moment, it seemed that Carter's discovery might only be the prelude to an even greater find: a hidden tomb within a tomb. The world held its breath, anticipating another revelation that could rewrite Egyptian history. The initial excitement was soon tempered by caution and rigorous scientific debate. Multiple subsequent scans by different teams produced conflicting results. Some confirmed the initial findings, while others found no conclusive evidence of hidden chambers. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, led by the cautious Dr. Zahi Hawass and later Dr. Mustafa Waziri, insisted on definitive proof before any physical investigation could proceed. The very idea of drilling a small hole or using an endoscope through the priceless, 3,300-year-old wall paintings was unthinkable without absolute certainty. The debate raged for years, a modern scientific mystery layered atop an ancient one. It highlighted the delicate balance between the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the paramount importance of preserving our irreplaceable cultural heritage. Ultimately, after extensive testing, the consensus shifted. The most thorough scans to date found no evidence of hidden chambers. The theory, for now, has been laid to rest. Tutankhamun's tomb, it seems, was destined to be a spectacular, self-contained discovery, its 4 rooms holding all the secrets it ever would. While the search for hidden chambers reached a conclusion, the analysis of the artifacts themselves entered a new, revolutionary phase. In the decades following the discovery, science developed tools that Carter could never have imagined. X-ray fluorescence, XRF, spectrometers, CT scanners, and DNA sequencers became the new torches illuminating the past. Researchers could now analyze the composition of metals, the source of gemstones, and the genetic makeup of the royal family without causing any damage to the priceless objects. The gold of the death mask, the lapis lazuli in the pectoral jewelry, the woods used for the furniture all began to reveal their secrets. They told stories of ancient trade routes stretching to Afghanistan for lapis, to the Mediterranean for cedar wood, painting a picture of an interconnected and sophisticated Bronze Age world, with Egypt at its center. One of the most poignant applications of modern science has been the virtual reunification of Tutankhamun's family. For centuries, the identities and fates of his immediate relatives were shrouded in mystery. DNA analysis conducted on several royal mummies from the 18th dynasty finally provided answers. The results confirmed that the mummy known as the younger lady found in KV-35 was both his mother and a full sister of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, pointing to generations of royal incest. His father was confirmed to be Akhenaten himself. The mummies of 2 fetuses found in his tomb were confirmed to be his stillborn daughters, a tragic testament to the genetic consequences of his lineage. This genetic data allowed researchers to construct a definitive family tree, solving mysteries that hieroglyphs alone could not. It revealed a dynasty plagued by genetic disorders, where the sacred practice of keeping the royal bloodline pure may have ultimately led to its physical weakness and collapse. The story of Tutankhamun is, ultimately, a human story. It is the tale of a boy thrust onto the throne of a crumbling empire, burdened by the religious revolution of his father and the weight of his own frail health. He died young, leaving no heir, and his name was nearly erased from history by his successors. For over 3,000 years, he slept in his dark, forgotten tomb. Then, in a twist of fate that he could never have imagined, he became the most famous pharaoh of all. His gold mask is now the universal symbol of ancient Egypt. His name is known to schoolchildren across the globe. His treasure has inspired awe and wonder in generations. In a final, ironic twist, The very obscurity that his enemies intended for him became the reason for his immortality. Because his tomb was small, hidden, and insignificant to later rulers, it survived intact, allowing his story to be told in its entirety, while the stories of greater pharaohs were lost to the robbers' pickaxes. In a final act of preservation and respect, the mummy of Tutankhamun was returned to his tomb. But he no longer rests within his golden coffins. In 2007, his fragile remains were removed from the stone sarcophagus and placed into a new, state-of-the-art climate-controlled glass case within the burial chamber. This was done to protect the mummy from the humidity and carbon dioxide introduced by thousands of visitors, which were causing rapid deterioration. Today, visitors to KV62 can look upon the actual, linen-wrapped body of the pharaoh, lying in a dimly lit, temperature-regulated case. It is a haunting and deeply moving experience. The gilded wood and brilliant gold are gone, replaced by the simple, stark reality of the human body that started it all. He is home, but his eternal slumber is now guarded by 21st century science, ensuring that the boy king, who has given the world so much, will be protected for generations to come. The so-called curse was not a single inscription, but a media fabrication built on a grain of truth and a mountain of superstition. While no hieroglyphic text saying "death shall come on swift wings" was ever found in Tutankhamun's tomb, the ancient Egyptians did believe in protective magic. Their tombs were guarded by symbolic spells and apotropaic objects designed to ward off evil, not to enact vengeance. The real curse was the power of suggestion, fueled by a Victorian fascination with the occult and a press hungry for a sensational story. When Lord Carnarvon, a frail man in his 50s, died from an infected mosquito bite in an era before antibiotics, it was the perfect spark for the myth. The subsequent deaths of others associated with the tomb, while tragic, were statistically unremarkable given their ages, health, and the era's medical limitations. The curse was a narrative, a ghost story for the modern age, born at the intersection of tragedy, coincidence, and sensational journalism. Howard Carter himself was the curse's greatest skeptic. He publicly and repeatedly dismissed it as Tommy rot. He found the idea an insult to his scientific work and a distraction from the true marvel of the discovery. He lived for 16 years after opening the burial chamber, dying of natural causes at 64. Arthur Callender, his chief assistant, lived to 66. Harry Burton, the photographer, lived to 59. Alfred Lucas, the chemist, lived to 79. The evidence was clear: there was no statistical pattern, no supernatural force picking off the excavation team. The curse's persistence in popular culture is a testament not to its truth, but to its power as a story. It adds a layer of dark romance to the tale of Tutankhamun, a final, mysterious shroud around the boy king, crafted not by ancient priests, but by the modern imagination. Beyond the gold and the glamour, the most valuable treasures of Tutankhamun's tomb were the humble, organic objects. His wardrobe of pristine linen undergarments, tunics, and gloves offered an unparalleled glimpse into the daily life and textile technology of the era. Baskets of dried fruit, jars of wine, and loaves of bread, preserved for millennia, spoke of the practical preparations for the afterlife. A simple wooden bed with an ebony and ivory headrest, a folding stool, and a box of children's toys revealed the human being behind the divine title. These objects, often overlooked in favor of the gold, tell a story of a young man who, despite his god-king status, had personal preferences, slept in a bed, ate food, and perhaps, in private moments, sought the simple comfort of a familiar toy. They are a powerful reminder that the pharaohs were, first and foremost, human. The political story hidden within the tomb is as dramatic as any treasure. Tutankhamun was the son of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, who upended Egyptian religion by worshipping a single god, the Aten, or sun disk. He moved the capital to a new city, Amarna, and turned his back on the powerful priests of Ammonius. When Tutankhamun ascended the throne as a child, he was a pawn in a great struggle for power. His tomb contains clues to this turbulent period. His original name was Tutankhamun, living image of the Aten. But early in his reign, under the guidance of powerful advisors, he changed it to Tutankhamun, living image of Ammonius, a clear signal of a return to the old gods and the re-establishment of the priestly power structure. Objects in his tomb were often hastily altered, with the names of Ammonius sometimes carved over the erased names of the Aten. His reign was a deliberate and strategic reversal of his father's revolution, an attempt to restore order to a fractured kingdom. The cause of Tutankhamun's death remains the subject of passionate debate, a 3,300-year-old cold case. The CT scan revealed a broken leg, but was it the cause of death or merely a contributing factor? The malaria parasites found in his system would have left him weak and feverish. Some theorists point to a bone disease that would have made him frail. Others have suggested more sinister causes. Analysis of the chariots and armor in his tomb show signs of use, indicating he may have been an active participant in hunting or even warfare. Could he have died in a chariot accident? Or was there foul play? The fracture in his leg showed no signs of healing, meaning he died soon after the injury. The exact sequence of events, a fall, a subsequent infection, the debilitating effects of malaria, may never be known with certainty. His death was likely a complex medical tragedy, the final failure of a body burdened by generations of royal inbreeding and disease. The legacy of Tutankhamun is not confined to museums, it is etched into the very identity of modern Egypt. The discovery occurred in 1922, the same year Egypt gained nominal independence from Britain. The treasures became a powerful symbol of national pride and a glorious, sovereign past. The Egyptian government, through the Department of Antiquities, ensured that Tutankhamun's treasures never left Egyptian soil permanently, establishing a precedent for cultural patrimony that resonates globally today. The Boy King story, unearthed by a British archaeologist, became a cornerstone of Egypt's own narrative. His face, replicated on everything from postage stamps to hotel logos, is a ubiquitous emblem of the nation. The revenue from tourism drawn by his allure has been a vital part of the economy for a century. Tutankhamun, in death, has become an eternal ambassador for his homeland, a bridge connecting the Egypt of the pharaohs to the Egypt of today. The journey of Tutankhamun's treasures is now reaching its grand finale. For decades, they were the heart of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo's Tahrir Square. Now, they are being meticulously moved to their new, permanent home, the Grand Egyptian Museum, GEM. This monumental complex, rising on the Giza Plateau in the shadow of the pyramids, is designed to be the largest archaeological museum in the world. Here, for the first time, all 5,398 objects from Tutankhamun's tomb will be displayed together. It is a Herculean task of conservation and logistics. Each artifact is photographed, scanned, stabilized, and transported with the utmost care. The GEM represents a new chapter, a 21st century shrine for the Boy King's legacy, ensuring his story is preserved and presented with unparalleled grandeur for centuries to come. As we reflect on this incredible story, from a forgotten pharaoh to a global icon, we are left with a profound sense of wonder. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb was a singular event, a perfect alignment of luck, persistence, and history. It gave us not just gold, but a connection, a tangible, breathtaking link to a civilization that has fascinated humanity for millennia. It taught us the importance of scientific rigor, the dangers of sensationalism, and the enduring power of a well-told story. The valley, however, is not finished. New technologies like LiDAR and muon tomography are now probing the bedrock, searching for the lost tombs of queens like Nefertiti and Ankhesenamun, or the elusive pharaohs of the forgotten dynasties. The sands of Egypt still hold secrets. The story of discovery that began with Howard Carter is far from over. The next great find may be just a shovel stroke away, waiting for a new generation of explorers to bring it into the light.